Hello, I'm Colin Baker, known to my friends as Old Sixie, the sixth Doctor in that wonderful series Doctor Who. And I am proud to tell you are listening to me, and also Gallifrey Public Radio, the radio that brings you everything from Doctor Who to Rhino Wants a Wife, which is a book written by Lucy Baker, my daughter. It's a children's book. You can get it from fbspublishing.co.uk, and it's about a rhinoceros who is lonely and wants a wife, and it's illustrated by my other daughter's boyfriend, and it's a bargain. Buy it.
This is Gallifrey Public Radio, dedicated to positive enjoyment of Doctor Who. We travel through classic and new episodes, explore the extended universe, and play a few games from time to time. We do discuss news, content that has been officially released, and the occasional interesting rumor, but we'll warn you before anything considered spoilers comes up.
Welcome to episode 526 of Gallifrey Public Radio. I'm Julie.
I'm Kier.
I'm Haley.
And I'm Jay. Today we close the first season of Disney Who and seek the answer to the latest episode's God-tier cliffhanger and Empire of Death.
But I'm still me. I've still got my memories, my family. All of that's still true, is it?
Absolutely. You are who you are.
The god of death created life.
And he gave you a very good brain. I think Unit can use you.
Oh.
Oh, but anything to help. I don't mind. I'll make the tea.
Did you make this tea?
I did, yes.
Don't make the tea.
I think the easiest way to describe this episode is that it was a roller coaster. Lots of ups and downs, some twists and turns, and some sudden drops that were exciting and terrifying.
If you want to carry that analogy out, you might also say that it leaves you going, huh, and deciding whether or not you want to write it again.
I do like carrying that out. I think that's a really good way to put it.
That might be related to why I see such a wide variance in reactions then, because some folks are saying that they really like the refreshing nature of a story with a big climax that's all about the little things. And just as many people are saying, no, you really can't do that after a season like this.
I feel like if the episode had ended a little earlier, then it might have felt that it was a good closure. But it's so open-ended that it leaves me a little frustrated. And I know it's trying to say something about carry us through to the next story so that every moment we can go back and rewatch the whole thing. But sometimes I don't want that. And I just want to know so that when we wait for another year, I'm not throwing my hands up in a question mark, like shrug of what? Again and again and again. Sometimes there's too much of that.
I think this story had two major functions that it needed to fulfill. One, it needed to wrap up the Sutekh threatening the Earth kind of thing, and it needed to answer Ruby's parentage. It technically did both of those. Mm-hmm. The way that it executed them is what's dividing people.
Yeah.
The one thing that got to me was it's like you can't have universe-ending consequences every story because it really starts to lose its punch. You have to have lower stake issues sometimes in order for things to feel real. Watching it for the first time, and when everyone in Unit gets dusted, there's that major reaction because they actually built it up. Like Kate was saying her goodbyes. You had a moment there where it was like is this real?
But then they killed the entire Earth immediately after that.
And you're like,
oh,
okay,
fine.
well, this obviously has to get rewound. And it pulled all the weight out of what you had just witnessed. Whereas if you have localized, low stakes stuff going on, you can totally believe if somebody dies that they're going to stay dead.
Right.
Yeah. Even the guy who died last episode came back. So everyone was returned. So, great. And seeing him at the end was another one of those, a little up moment. But I think the panic that they also built up in that moment of the entire Earth ending, that was not earned. It really pulled me out of it every time I watched it, because people don't know that is a dust that will kill them. I think they showed some of the bigger cities. If that happens, sure, there's going to be kind of like a, what is that? What's going on? People have seen enough TV and other types of things. Like they may react to it. I think the most realistic thing was the car kind of going off the side of the road and crashing. That's what you would have. You wouldn't have people panicking and running from it, because the doctor should be the only one doing that in that sort of feverish way. And that kind of, like you're saying, it heightens it too much, where you can't go from 0 to 100 when you haven't ever said, maybe 50 is where we should have tried to hit and pull you with us. It's like a knee-jerk reaction almost.
And the fact that it happened so early on in the episode meant that we spent the majority of the episode being like, okay, we know this gets reversed. We're just spinning our wheels until they figure it out. Like there was never any like, it's like, oh, things are ramping up towards this big climax. It's like, no, you hit it immediately, and now we're just waiting for you to tell us how it gets resolved.
Yeah, it's like they meant for these to be watched together, which is fine. And that's your about 60% of the way through the entire story arc. So sure. But for this episode on its own, it's very clunky.
Maybe if the dust had moved slower, so we felt the weight of losing our new unit crew for a few minutes as the story continues to unfold, and then it spreads through all of London, and then if it's a slower moving wave and we have time to deal with the loss for a second before it's like, oh no, this is too big, it's gonna get fixed.
It's like that Sarah Jane episode where those creepy plants, like it slowly infected people and then it started to escalate and become a major issue. Then you're allowed to have people running and screaming because you've had a few days of people are turning into dust. Where's my family? What's going on? The panic actually sets in, and then it rolls through the streets and people are scared. But when it's so immediate, and maybe for time they had to cut some of that development, but I feel like it was an important thing that got skipped.
That's very likely. That there was probably more to this. There may have been entire scenes or things that would have made that extend so that it had the time to influence and sort of drive emotions. But we know that Davies loves his cleverness. He loves his words. And he doesn't always take criticism to heart or rather to action. So if the only pushback that could be done from any other voice is coming from the editing room where they're saying, hey, sorry, boss, so, we got to keep this within this time parameter. Certain darlings have to get killed here. Maybe that's the compromise. But I understand that seeing the sands take over in multiple places at once, the difference in this particular universe ending issue, again, to Jay's point, is that it's happening everywhere the Doctor has touched for years, because this threat has been latched onto or hiding on the outside of the TARDIS and seeding like a pollen or what have you, and actually creating a Susan at each landing. Everywhere that it goes, I think that's a very, very clever mechanism. Having this thing that has been moving in the Doctor's wake for who knows how long, and making them immediately feel responsible for all that demise. That's a fascinating type of guilt to saddle the Doctor with, yeah? We've hobbled the Doctor with universe-ending guilt before, but this is a new way. So maybe that's what we do now. We find new ways to make the Doctor feel gut-wrenching guilt every season.
And that did take a little bit longer for them to talk through it in the TARDIS, and to give Ncuti that moment of like screaming into the literal void. But yeah, does the urgency of the stuff prior earn you the right to just let him do that in reaction? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't think so.
Pull back for a second, and I'll ask something. I'm sure that each of you has watched the episode probably more than once, maybe a handful of times. So, question one: when you first finished your first viewing, the credits roll for that first time through, what was top of your mind when you realized that this was how they were ending the season? And question two is, on rewatches, did that shift in any direction?
I would say like the resolution of the Sutekh part of the story felt very Doctor Who. It didn't feel season ending Doctor Who. Like, I think if that had been the kind of resolution we got on like a mid-season story of bringing death to death, and that's how we're going to solve this problem, it maybe I wouldn't think of it so critically. I think that the Ruby resolution was more of a letdown than the Sutekh part.
I think that on first viewing, I liked it better than Space Babies, but that was pretty much about it. I thought about everything else we'd been handed this season, and I was like, this was not up to par with what I've been getting the past few weeks. Then rewatching it again and watching for the little stuff that I'd missed the first time, I enjoyed the Easter eggs that I found. With all of the questions removed, I was able to watch the performances and things like that, and I was able to enjoy aspects of it more. But on the whole, I appreciated the episode even less the second time.
I was definitely on the edge of my seat, and I think it was very exciting, and I was picking up on a lot of different auditory and visual Easter eggs the whole time. Like, I think that the voice of Sutekh at moments and the laugh and some of those things felt very Baker-esque to me, so I was kind of riding that high. Seeing the name at the end that was not Baker, I was like, oh,
Gabriel Wolf, the original Sutekh.
Yeah, which is super fun. And I think like carrying it through and having him do kind of the laughs in that way, I'm sure, played well. But I think without those things, it's even less. And I don't know if everything else carried it through. I think in a recommendation standpoint, you have to watch these two episodes together, which makes sense because it's sort of a two-parter. But I'm not looking always for that. And so it does make it tough when you're saying, give me a chance, let me show you one episode. You can't do this. And it's a season ender, so that it's not necessarily something you would, but sometimes we've seen finales where you can, and it drives something home, and I don't think we got that here. I think to Jay's point at the very beginning, it did answer the questions that we had for the most part, but I think it also asked and brought up even more that we'll get to those, I'm sure.
So Haley, you mentioned that you didn't feel like the Ruby's parentage question was answered sufficiently, or that it wasn't rewarding when it got answered.
Yeah. Go ahead.
were you hoping for it to be more of a big deal? Like that it was, one of the theories that we'd heard or even floated ourselves? Or is it just that it got tacked on with the rest of it, that it didn't have the punch?
It was a little bit of it being tacked on, but to me, if you're going to build something up as like this season-long mystery, the parentage is just like undeterminable without the use of a time machine. To then just have it be like, oh, it was just these two teenagers, 15 years old, and this happened 20 years ago. Like, then it shouldn't have been the mystery it was, is part of my thing. Like, it shouldn't have been like the thing holding Sutekh at bay was the mystery of her parentage. Like, I'm fine with the companion just being a human from Earth and the child of two humans, and that's fine. Let the companion be that then. Don't build up this big mystery, and even with the use of the TARDIS and the time window and all of the units of the resources of UNIT, we can't figure out who this person is. And then at the end, it's just, a couple of people.
Right.
And not for nothing, but I'm pretty sure nurse records, you would have given blood samples of some kind and they would have been able to find her prior to that. Like, you don't go ghost when you are in that kind of line of work. I feel like, I don't know, we know nurses. I feel like we could ask, but seems like a thing you'd have on record in case there were needs for it.
To me, the thing is, like, if the doctor knew that there was this time period at which point every human, or every person in England at least, or in the UK, had their DNA put on file, then the TARDIS scan should have picked this up from the time he started the TARDIS scan of Ruby, right?
The ambulance would have had it on record.
Yeah.
Like all of these things, it should have already been known. Why didn't any of those come up with it prior?
Because we needed the mystery to last until this episode. And the fact that is the only explanation that fits proves how weak it was. Like, I love the fact that Ruby's mom is just some rando. Like, not everybody needs to be a Skywalker, okay?
Yeah.
I appreciate that fact, that it was just like, no, she was special because you thought she was special. That's great. But yeah, the fact that the only answer is plot means it's a little underwhelming.
Including she was pointing because you needed to be named. They go back and forth on that, I think 2-3 times, where they're like, yeah, what was she doing? What was she doing? Trying to be the audience in the moment, saying, look, we recognize that we threw you this curveball and now we're going to call it out, sort of fourth wallish, but that's too much in my mind as well. Like, that doesn't work either. Because who was she pointing? Like, who was supposed to see that she was pointing at the sign and they were supposed to know that was going to be her name?
You're standing there for some time too.
Somebody notice.
That's, like as they're doing the little projections. Yeah, I'm just going to stand here and point here until somebody inside that church sees me.
Also, like, why was she in a black cloak from, again, Dickensian times?
15-year-old has a cloak like that? Like, I get that it's cold around Christmas, but come on,
like,
really?
Yeah, why not just have her be in, like, a regular coat with the hood up? Because that ruins the fake mystery we're creating. That's the reason why.
Yeah, it had to be something that could potentially be otherworldly, because nobody really dresses like that, except the 13th Doctor. It's a shame it wasn't her. I really like that theory a lot, but I don't want to give the impression that I didn't like this story. I did, and I liked a lot of the aspects of it. But what I'm still grappling with after 3 or so viewings in the last few days is that if you try, and I tried this, if you watch it in conjunction with the preceding episode, if you watch the pair of them together, it holds up better. Mm-hmm. There's something to the sequence of the two. That watching them together, it shifts where the peak of the plot, the climax is. So that if you don't have that break after, like everyone's been saying, the first half of the two-parter leaves us, kind of feeling, wow, they have put so much in motion right now. And at that point, right at the close of Legend of Ruby Sunday, the stakes we know are going to be so high because death is starting to roll across the face of the planet again. But we don't sit with that because it was being laid out at such a frenetic pace and everything's getting into position at just the right time for Sutekh's big reveal and and we're all like, oh, hell yeah, let's go. Let's keep going with this. But then we have a week to sit and reflect and theorize. And now the next week's episode comes and the pace and strategy of part 2 feels almost anticlimactic because of what we've built up in our heads. If we don't have that gap, I think it rolls together much better because that's something where we go back to the roller coaster analogy. We've crested the peak and we're in full free fall, screaming and grasping for safety.
So why'd they kick this season off with 2 episodes instead of ending it with 2 episodes?
Great question.
Yeah. So I will say I only watched the episode once, and I did watch it that way, like watch the first half and then immediately into the second half because I was watching it with somebody who had missed the previous episode, so we watched them both together. Okay. And I do think it probably worked better. Like, I haven't watched it just as its own episode yet, but it does feel like one story, like actually like one classic story. Like, it's a 2-hour story with pieces of it. Yeah. And I think you're right. But I think I like 75% of the 2-part story. Unfortunately, the bulk of that is in the first half. Mm-hmm. So that's just a testament to how weak the resolution is, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
If the conclusion is going to rely that heavily on the first episode, you need to restructure something. Because if you know it's going to be 2 episodes, you have to give enough weight where it needs to be. Even if that means pulling something from the first episode to put into the second episode. Understand that you're not telling a 2-hour movie. You are doing 2 1-hour episodes that each have to be, like, even if it is a 2-parter, you have to understand that the way people consume things, especially given the release schedule, they're each going to have to be able to stand on their own.
For sure.
Or just really make it 2 hours. If you have a 2-hour story to tell, just make it a 2-hour story. A modern audience, I think, is capable of viewing a 2-hour story in a way that maybe like previous TV release structures didn't work. Today, most of it's going to be viewed online. There's very little like appointment television watching. If it's a 2-hour story, make it a 2-hour story.
Well, and I mean, to Julie's point, if they had released both of them at the same time, it would give people that option to be like, holy crap, that was amazing. Let's jump right into the second one. Or if they can't, if they watch the second one later, then it's more, they're like, oh, wow, I really should have watched that back to back. And it feels more like they did something wrong instead of the show.
Yeah, you pick up with that immediate sense of dust blowing over everything in that first 5 minutes. Cat's out of the bag now. What are you going to do to put it back? Like you said, we're just waiting. Or I guess it's not a cat, it's a dog, but you know.
It's a dog. It's very, very evil greyhound.
But I think what that does is it takes the stories from being like, if last week's episode was a B and this week's episode was a D, it makes the whole story a C. So it helps some of it. It does pick up this second half. It doesn't fix the fact that the resolution was a bit of a letdown to a lot of people. And that doesn't change by restructuring.
I do have a wonder if some of what we've learned about Ruby is still a tee up for something coming in a next season. The Mrs. Flood at the end, I mean, Mrs. Flood in the middle and the end. I don't know if we're ready to shift to that part of this, but yeah. She comes in, she does something, and she calls herself out. And then she is not part of Sutekh. This is something different. And then we see her at the end with a suitcase and the umbrella. And I don't know what's going on there, but it feels like Ruby might still have... she's obviously going to be a companion again. But it feels like it's going to be something still with her to play into the next season. So are you allowed to do that in, again, this kind of storytelling?
I don't think you should. If this is the resolution of Ruby's parentage, then it is what it is. Don't be like, just kidding, we're going to do that again. We're going to spend another whole season doing Ruby's parentage and the mystery of her. I don't think you should go back to it. If it's the story you told is the story you told, and people accepted it however they took it. And let's move on to the next thing.
Even if it's kind of the flip the card over and it's not more mystery, but more reveal at the top of a next season to bring, connect them together, I don't think it excuses how this one ended, but does it make it okay that it's still just seeds and we're watching for that plant to grow?
I think so.
I think Mrs. Flood can just be separate from Ruby. I don't think her part of the story relies on Ruby, except maybe that's why she chose that house, is because she knew the doctor would eventually be there.
Right. The only character historically that would not, not only would have the patience for waiting that sort of thing out and wouldn't necessarily be upset by the fact that they got one-upped on the, look at the damage I can do scale, but rather gets disappointed and left saying, oh, yeah, I had such big plans, would have been the Master, and specifically Missy, because of that idea of reveling in the chaos of it all. And then after the restoration, laying there with Cherry and referring to the doctor as, oh, that clever boy, which is an expression that kind of smacks of Clara. Missy could have picked up that phrase along the way, because she was in relative periphery for long enough to hear that and think, oh, yeah, that Oswald character, she was right. He is a clever boy. So it could be connected, and with the umbrella and the baggage and the whole thing too. So
the first thing that popped to mind when they showed her in like the all white with the umbrella was like, oh, Mary Poppins really is a Time Lord, and that's where they're going with this.
That's it wasn't a cloth bag, but it had. I did zoom in. I think the sticker said Penzance.
Oh, I didn't zoom in on it.
Oh, I did not get to
words on it.
I did not get to.
We're going to find out at the end of the next season that Mrs. Flood's parents are just normal people that they couldn't find for
part of a cloning program.
I'm still not entirely convinced that Mrs. Flood is malevolent. Like, she could have plans and not be destructive. I will say she seems to have, more knowledge of the world than the average human would. She knew about Sutekh and what his coming would mean, and all that. But it also seemed like she was comforting Cherry at the end. This was in the previous episode, or no, I guess that was in this one. She was comforting Cherry. So I'm not convinced she's entirely malevolent. Maybe not necessarily good, maybe still an antagonist, but, to be told in season 2.
She's like a storyteller.
That falls in meddling monk territory.
Because of the way that it got presented as like, I'm here to tell you that his story ends in terror. Mm-hmm. That's someone who is, like you're saying, meddling in it and reveling in watching something else burn, but maybe isn't directly responsible for starting the fire.
Sure.
Like, what happens if I push this domino over? And
right. Oh, but there's a little bit of if somebody else walks in and pushes it for you. You still get to see the effect, but you weren't the one who got to push it.
Yeah.
And that actually, in my mind, takes the mystery out of the Ronnie category, because she always had more of an agenda than plans, and had reasons that would be justified within her scientific mind. Mm-hmm. That's why these things had to be done, and the Master was used when the Master was useful. Others were used when they were of use. Just pawns in the process of implementing that agenda. But it was always dead set forward. And the Ronnie did not historically react well when she didn't get to be the one to push that domino. She went crazy.
Maybe this is an older, more mellow Ronnie.
Right. She doesn't have the energy to be throwing fits like that. I've also heard the name Romana thrown around.
I don't think Romana could be that rude to Cherry.
I'm just saying I've heard it thrown around. I am not I'm not putting a quarter on anything at this point. You know, the thing I love about it is that it is such a mystery, and it is something that we know that this is not going to resolve the same as Ruby's parents. Like, the fact that, you know, we've had all this time to build it up and they're going to keep it going. They close the season with it. Like, this is going to be a mystery that plays out for a while, and it's going to be something exciting when it does come to fruition. So I'm thrilled to just sit and watch how it unfolds at this point.
It's more like the Sutekh reveal, where it's the one who waits. It's another one of those. It's like a big, important something. We just don't know. We do not have enough clues to put it all together yet. Or
the clues that we've been given really just aren't that apparent.
It's completely obvious when we go back, but, you know.
The only other, like, random thought I had was the White Guardian. Like, they did put her in all white at the very end.
Yeah, but there were no feathers.
Actually, were there feathers on her hat? Oh, okay.
It was fur. It was very much fur, yeah.
There was a good breakdown that I was reading through because, well, you know, my ears perked up to the whole Guardian thing a little while ago, but I wasn't sure if we could consider white or black. The White Guardian was always the one that really held relatively strong to the no interference sort of policy. They never really had a kind of a plan to anything. It was just a matter of maintaining. You know, not that they were being particularly lawful or anything, but just kind of hands off. So that would sort of fly in the face of Mrs. Flood's having such plans that she didn't get to.
Yeah, unless her such plans are just sitting with tea watching all of the things that she knows will happen, see how they finally end. But I can't imagine that that's how they would write it and then try to backtrack that.
Yep. Yeah, I'm glad that we now have something to ponder and carry over, because, you know, they systematically went through and tried to resolve a lot of the other mysteries that we were hoping to try and pin down. So this is the one thing that, you know we get to the end and you see somebody skittering off in the distance and we might have missed something over there. So it's a nice device to hand to the fans, even though it is one that we had from the beginning. It's kind of odd to have that little overt wink from the creators that there's something to keep an eye out for that was handed to us back in the Christmas special. God, I really have no idea what that's going to mean for the upcoming Christmas special. I mean, how do you are we going to have like a holiday bottle episode that has nothing to do with anything? Or is it going to be like the Christmas flood? Sort of crazy ass thing.
Oh, so it doesn't even carry into the next season. It's just deal with it one episode.
If it's something like a reveal of a known character, then you can do that. You can have a Christmas episode that has importance to the canon because it puts a known piece back on the board. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's, you know, the big bad that's going to be dominant for the season to come. So it can just be kind of seen sort of within the boundaries of a single holiday story, no lasting repercussions or ramifications other than a nice gift.
Yeah.
Roll back for a second, because Jay was talking about this earlier about being able to enjoy the Easter eggs. You get those obviously the more times you watch because you're catching the little things in the background, whether it's in the dialogue or visually. So in front of our eyes, we get this remembered TARDIS, right? You know, the one built from the TARDIS's own memory of itself and everything that it's interacted with over the millennia. And it's the storage closet of the TARDIS, and it's, you know, it's being presented through, you know, kind of like the way memories have slight distortions of scale and things like that. So kind of take me through your thoughts on the use of that mechanism.
I loved the mini TARDIS. It was the moment that he walked in and you see the shrunken scale of it and all of the stuff on the side. I was just like, this is my favorite part of the episode. Like, instantly, I knew. And then spending every moment that they're in that TARDIS trying to divide my attention between, like, what are they talking about, what's actually going on, and looking for all of the things hidden in the background. That was so much fun.
I didn't look for all the things in the background because I knew there were so many that I was just going to wait until I could do a screenshot and then just blow it up real big and like circle it. But I was wondering what everyone's favorite thing that you noticed was from the memory TARDIS.
The one that jumped out the most to me, the first thing that I recognized was probably Bessie's license plate.
That
seeing
was
that
mine
on the
as
wall
well.
Jumped out.
I liked the drawer of Sonics.
Yeah, the drawer of Sonics was good.
Yeah, minus the one that Mel almost stole.
Well, we didn't. I think it happened.
I enjoyed looking through and trying to find elements from each TARDIS interior previously, because you had like that roundel and then that roundel next to it, and trying to be like, okay, I've got, it was almost like a TARDIS bingo card. Like I've got that one and I've got that one and I've got that one. And where is 4s? Damn it. No.
And the ones that are clearly 3s that would pop open and drop random stuff everywhere.
Just barfs out whistles and things. The one thing that I caught were some of the recollections of the TARDIS's experiences. So at one point, just above a shelf, you see the porcelain mask from one of the clockwork droids from Girl in the Fireplace. You know, such an interesting little inclusion. You know, there were loads of those little bits, but the thing I thought was the most unusual was the use of the entirety of 13's interior console scaled down and almost used like a campfire in the middle of the space.
Yeah.
It seems unusual that it just took the entire structure and kind of shrunk it down, you know? Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and see if I can find a little bit of 12's console, you know, with the Gallifreyan that was etched all the way around the time rotor. That was such a beautiful interior, in my opinion, and I just want to see if it was referenced in there in some way.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun just looking through for all those things, but again, like frequently when you're in there, they're talking about important stuff that you're like, I don't want to miss what's going on, but at the same time, I need to find new things.
Well, how about how is that connected to the next step in the solution, though? Because that's where I got a little wobbly on the rails, because the sand of death covering planets across the cosmos, but you've got one person, this kind woman, according to the credits, who is somehow left behind a lot longer than the others, and the doctor's just wandering that planet wearing a duster and the spoon and everything.
I took it to be that everywhere the doctor landed had a Susan twist, Sutekh, and anything that was crossed in between was catching into it because of how far the doctor traveled. It's what they talked about. And that was the explanation that the doctor gave to Mel. So there would have been an edge of that. And because everything started to perish and die, that's where the loss of memory came into everything. That everything is dying. We've forgotten who we are, where we came from. And that's where the doctor had been searching for. It was verbally said, it's been so long since I've seen other people. And I think everyone was forgetting things. I think the doctor was forgetting things. I think obviously that kind woman was as well. And it was that last ditch effort of, we need metal because we need to give it something that's real again, that it can process with the time window was starting to fade, and it needed realness in its world, which is metal or gears or wire of some kind. It makes sense, but yeah, is it strong enough to carry it? It
felt disjointed from the rest of it. Like it felt like, oh, we need something to show how this is affecting the rest of the universe. And so they threw it in there just as instead of the doctor pulling a spoon out of a drawer, here, we'll throw this scene in here so you can see how widespread this thing is to try and give it weight again. But as we mentioned, you already put all the weight right out there in front. So this just felt like, I don't know, it felt disjointed.
I saw the obvious connection where it continued the theme and the messaging of the strength of familial bonds. But even that, the whole idea of the maternal connection to a baby that she doesn't quite remember and doesn't recall, the baby's already passed, and that all starts to get a little strange through the whole sequence. Just struck me as really odd. I had thought I had missed something that was explaining how we transitioned to here. So when we get to this post-apocalyptic view of the Doctor walking through the dust, I was thinking that we've jumped forward in time or something, and I didn't even know how far or why.
Yeah. I think one of the purposes of that scene was to show what happens right before they succumb to, like, the effect of Sutekh through the bloodlines or whatever, you know, where people are dying as the wave travels backwards, so that we would know what was happening with Mel. I felt like that was the only purpose of meeting that woman, was to establish that that's what's happening, but there wasn't enough of a reason for it to happen on its own besides serving to give us that story element. Like, us getting there and having that scene doesn't make sense on its own.
And the spoon is like the magical key of let's turn this back on and get the next plot point pushed through.
Yeah.
So bringing Roger Ap William back into it and having Ruby kind of remember but kind of not, with that kind of where did he come from?
The 73 yards thing again, like a little bit feeding into that episode.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't mind that.
I liked it, and I feel like having had the previous episode where Ruby was the one to solve it because the Doctor had been time locked out by the fairy circle was very interesting to have the Doctor then come through and say, I was here because we broke in and stopped him from pushing the button, ending the world. It's just another look back to that episode. But I don't know. It felt, I guess, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think I liked that it was included and then it wraps the whole seasons necessarily together. But again, it goes back to the whole, why was that the moment where the blood was found because of the registry? Like, it feels forced into it. Or did that feel like a natural way to include all of this and wrap him back into the story?
Well, it also kind of answered the question of, like, okay, so Ruby went and, you know, stopped him and chased him off where he quit, but then it kind of, we undid that timeline. So what happened? And this answers that question of, like, it played out the way that it would have without her interference. And so we get that solution of it's still like basically that story never happened, so to speak.
Yeah, except that she still remembers things about it.
So what? Yeah, which I think is a good answer to our question when we were watching 73 Yards, which was how much of this is she going to retain? And the answer seems to be that it's going to be there, but it's going to be this murky thing that she's never quite able to shake or fully grasp, which I'm okay with.
I saw a fan theory about the interview with Roger Ap William saying that he was the son of William, and the end of Ruby's discovery was that her father's name is William. And so somehow maybe they are related. Yeah. Feels like a strong pull, but I wouldn't put it past people.
But, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert on Welsh culture, but isn't the Ap William kind of the way that, like, we have names like Johnson and stuff now, so somebody with the last name Johnson isn't the son of John anymore. Somewhere in their family's past, there was a son of John, and that just became the family name. I assume the Ap William thing is the same.
Of William, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like O'Connor, MacDonald.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're called patronymic. Speaking of the theories on names and things, my ears got really, really confused when I heard Ruby's mother's name actually said, and I thought, oh, did I hear that wrong? Did they just say Lucy Miller? Ah! And started.
Yes, I also did. I picked up on that. I was like, wait.
That would, I think, casual fans and viewers would have gotten extremely upset if there were some sort of reliance on character knowledge exclusively from Big Finish.
Now I have to go back and listen to all this other stuff.
No, Lucy Miller would not have left a foundling, I don't think.
No, she would not.
Unless there's a story about why she had to.
Yeah. But so I feel really bad for the guy who was the barista. He's just stuck there holding a drink for a woman who is completely ignoring him crying in the corner now.
Yes, so I saw that was irritating you, and I paid particular close attention on the subsequent rewatch, and the guy just hacked off. He just put the mug down. You see him off in another corner, like, if I got time to lean, I got time to clean. I'm going to be back here wiping down the espresso machine. So I don't think he worried too much about
Every coffee shop I've gone to, they shout your name once and then they put it on the counter, and it's your problem now.
Yeah. Exactly. He said that, and he heard her being like, it's like, I'm Ruby, and talking to the other woman, and then tears started, and he was just like, oh, nope, not getting involved.
Not again.
Yeah, he doesn't even whip out his phone and start recording or anything anymore. It's like just to ignore.
Oh, is it that time of the week now? Got it.
Every Thursday, I swear. Another tearjerker reunion. There were a lot of things in this, even aside from the Easter eggs, that I just enjoyed. The fact that they were included and that they made absolutely no sense, but they were just little bits of business that I thought were fantastic. I love, and I couldn't, first time through, I could have sworn that it was going to be something bigger, but it proved to just be the fact that Morris just wanted a slice of pizza. And I think that's so perfect. He's 13 years old. He's back from the dead. Everybody's really happy and emotional. And I'm just going to go get a slice.
Yeah, but don't let Susan make your tea, apparently.
Great delivery. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was one of the few points where I actually laughed out loud.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, and it showed the camaraderie of that group. They go through some super heavy stuff, but then also they razz each other and keep it real.
And they hold hands tenderly. Did you see the handhold?
Wait, who held hands?
With Ibrahim, Christopher
Ibrahim and
who's a sergeant,
Kate.
Corporal. I forget what his rank is, but Ibrahim, whom we've had since the 2023 specials, and when they all come back, he helps her to her feet. Moment there, and then they're all walking out on the Stark Tower deck. Sorry, I'm calling it Stark Tower. Everybody's calling it Stark Tower, for crying out loud. Yes. But they hold hands again, and I think he reaches first. So she takes his hand as they walk.
He reached for Kate's hand, and she reciprocated.
And then they shift their grip to be a more, it's not just a, here, hold on to my hand. They shift so that it's a better embrace between the two of them. It's very interesting.
Get it, Kate?
Yeah, you've been working out. They make a big point of that in multiple episodes. Doctor's up there, feeling his pecs. Yeah, all right.
But also, we see, again, Kate's nails are very red. So I know that was already discussed. I just want to make sure that gets brought up. Because
I have a little nugget of a thought that I think everybody else needs to ponder. So Sutekh was dropping a Sue every time the TARDIS landed. The TARDIS lands in approximately modern time several times a season. Does that mean a new Sue has been born every time the TARDIS lands approximately modern day? So there's a bunch of Sues that are like a few months apart in age.
No, they cover that in the script.
That's why this one is just. That's why this one is just so much smarter. Is because every time he lands, it just the copy gets sharper.
Well, in that case, then the Susan twist that Ruby saw in the timeline that we forgot has to be this Susan.
Yes.
The one she saw in Wales.
The one who was hiking, yeah.
Which is why we got the most interaction from her, and she seemed like the most real kind of person.
Agreed. Yeah, I accept that.
Yeah, I wish she'd had a line about how she just went on vacation in Wales.
They should have, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we delayed for this moment because I was able to get my relaxation in right before it.
Yeah.
I'm ready to work.
I'm a little disappointed that the jukebox turned out to mean nothing.
We got a mini jukebox in the
I was going to say, we got a mini one. Yeah.
The series hasn't ended yet. We're still going to keep using this TARDIS next season. It could still become something more.
Yeah. I think that's a whole nother episode. We have to discuss our overall things we wanted and did we get them, because I don't think we could talk about all of that now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Jay, I think you were the one that was questioning, what do you do with this thing? Does it kind of poof away your memory TARDIS so that it just kind of drifts back into its subsequent parts, or
is there now a room somewhere in the TARDIS that is the memory TARDIS?
Well,
No, that's a TARDIS within a TARDIS. That's a paradox you can't do. Well, they did do it, and it didn't go well.
They do it a lot.
And every time they do, they've got to.
It doesn't go well.
But the doctor specifically said at one point, like the screen was linked to the time window, and that was the only thing keeping it all together. And so when Ruby drops the screen and shatters it, we don't see the memory TARDIS anymore after that. It's
Agreed.
all TARDIS Prime.
Yeah, I think it got crushed when she threw it to the ground. She said, let me
TARDIS
throw that
Prime?
screen to the ground.
The TARDIS is an Autobot? Cool.
That tracks.
I'm just, out of everything that came out of there, the thing that impressed me the most was the holding capacity of that red bungee cord, because I have tried to hang a lot of things in my garage.
No, it was a memory thread.
Okay.
Yeah, he said it was an intelligent rope, just like the intelligent gloves. Weight doesn't matter.
An intelligent rope with that same stupid little bent metal hook end that your cheap Harbor Freight bungee cords come with. Sorry.
Right, not even a clip.
It was stuck into a bit of the TARDIS, though, which is like a toothy maw that grabbed onto it.
The statement was made that it was a molecular bond, which was why it held on to Sutekh's dog collar for however long that poor thing was getting dragged.
To be fair, he was a very bad dog.
He was a very bad dog.
Pooped in the TARDIS.
I watched that TV show, and that guy said there are no bad dogs except Sutekh. We also did not see Harriet, our harbinger, at the end.
So
Right.
She was...
in the Maestro episode, that harbinger disappeared when Maestro came. So I don't think the harbingers are as permanent as whatever Sue was.
Yeah,
They're
that harbinger
temporary things that
disappeared
go away
except
when
for
they're done.
when he showed up at the end after Maestro had been defeated.
Right. The harbingers never really go. They're just dismissed.
You expect me to remember something that happened 2 months
They're
ago?
just dismissed because Harriet never dusted.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is why
She was in the TARDIS at the time when it got... I don't know.
She got
I mean,
blasted
something.
by the TARDIS.
Yes,
Yeah, so-
that's right. That's right. Okay.
was that supposed to be the opening of the Eye of Harmony?
I think so.
Because it's kind of a, that idea of, okay, we've opened this recess down to the TARDIS's core. So without having to try to explain to people at this stage, newer viewers, what's powering the TARDIS, let's find another time to introduce them or explain that Eye of Harmony. Right now, we don't need to explain it. Let's just zap. But I think I don't mind. I honestly do not mind the fact that we had an emotional solution as opposed to one that was gizmo driven and things like that. I really don't mind that at all. I think the way that it's set forward is kind of what's tripping a lot of people up. And I totally get that. I'm not 100% satisfied with the execution, but the intent and the freshness of it, there's an explanation that Davies was giving to an interviewer that was asking, why are you having Shooty cry so much? So much. How many times are they going to step on this man's toes so that he cries on camera? But that was intentional because they wanted the Doctor to be more emotionally resonant. With things that it was like, I guess it was his decision, or Russell T Davies' decision, to say that the Doctor is at a point now where they are, where the empathy is so raw that it drives decisions in a new way, or in a way that has not been allowed to happen for very long on the program. We've had periods where the Doctor's very concerned and you have the Doctor sometimes being very aloof or very enigmatic, but this was going to run with that empathetic reaction for an entire season of this more sensitive, or not even sensitive, I guess, just cognizant aware,
empathetic,
Emotionally intelligent.
openly feeling. And I think that makes sense when during the bi-generation, and they said that you'll be going through the therapy so that the prior but future also doctor, time is weird, has experienced and gone through that. This doctor still can't stay in a family situation and be there for Ruby as her best friend. And they've said that many times. She's my best friend, cannot be there to support her and go through the let me discover who I am and who my family is. My mom, my dad haven't met him yet. Can you come with me? And she asks very openly and says, oh, but you don't do that kind of thing. And I think there was an unspoken yet at the end of that sentence of he doesn't even respond. And she says, I love you. And he just turns his back and then cries a little bit. And then, the next scene is him punching a button, pulling a lever, and just going off to find what's the next thing. And I think that that's part of the journey the doctor is still taking for the healing of being able to eventually become the tenant doctor who could stay and be with a family and find out what that means to just be somewhere and not be the last of your kind and suffer for it.
How's your uncle?
Yeah.
All in all, this episode had a lot of weight and expectation on it. I feel like the season overall was pretty great. I just can't help but feel like they fumbled it a little bit at the end, but still, if you're looking at the average, I think it was a great run.
Yeah. And none of the individual components of what was included within this episode are anything new for Doctor Who, really. As far as the hidden in plain sight stuff, the answer was within you, the importance of the every person, it's kind of the 900 years, and I've never met someone who wasn't important. All these things have been done in classic and modern stories. It's just the fact that they're all being used inside of one episode's story progression. Maybe that's kind of what makes it feel a little like a greatest hits album that's loaded with songs that maybe aren't your personal favorites.
And obviously the rewatchability is high. So maybe it'll start to piece together, or worst case, as we go through to the next series, we will come back and revisit these and we won't mind doing it.
And just like that, 7 weeks later, we've burned through all the new Doctor Who televised content we'll see until Christmas. We'll recap the season in the next week or two, but we want the podcast to provide the content you enjoy most. So a poll will be up on site and social shortly after this episode's release, asking you what you want to hear. Rewatches, games, interviews, theory discussions, trivia. You tell us.
This has been episode 526 of Gallifrey Public Radio. Until next time, this is Jay saying, man, I do not envy William. He's about to have a hell of a day with the Sunday showing up on his doorstep.
And this is Kira saying, I am Missy the White, and I come back to you now with the turn of the tide.
This is Julie saying, oh, who are they? I don't know. They just travel in the TARDIS.
And this is Haley saying, I'm gonna pet that dog.
We'll see you next time.
Allons-y.
Tag, you're it.
Bye.
Can I pet that dog?
I'll pet that dog.
Can I pet that dog?
Thanks for listening to Gallifrey Public Radio. As a fan-run podcast, your thoughts and opinions are part of the conversation. Leave us a comment or review on your preferred podcast app, find us on social media to message us, or visit GallifreyPublicRadio.com for email and voicemail contacts. We'll see you out there in time and space.
Hi, this is Jacob. This recording of Gallifrey Public Radio is copyrighted in 2024. GPR is a fan-owned, fan-produced podcast. We'll see you next time!